So something absolutely crazy just happened as Blizzard seems to have retconned some really big and iconic lore. In Season of Discovery we got the new never before seen Scarlet Crusade instance, which is not really a big deal, but in this scenario the Scarlet Crusade was the one that actually got the Ashbringer, it empowered the Scarlet Crusade, they defeated the Dreadlord Balnazzar, and the sword was purified through Nordrassil, which absolutely changes everything we had previously known. Without the Ashbringer storyline, there would be no defeat of the Lich King at Icecrown, and if the Scarlets have it, would Arthas even be able to destroy their enclave like he did in the Dead Knight starting zone? Apparently, Season of Discovery is just found photographs, not an alternate reality, but this seems to be a serious deviation from the known lore. So what is going on? Is Blizzard literally starting a brand new timeline where things are going to play out differently in future Season of Discovery expansions, or is this a setup for the Light Emperor and the World Soul Saga? All know about the lag spikes and unstable ping, which can ruin everything, but exit lag was built to fix exactly that. It's not just a connection tool, but a complete upgrade to your whole setup. With the new update V513, everything is better than before with a new visual update and an FPS boost. The AI route optimizer connects you to the best real-time paths across 2,000 global servers, so you're essentially always on the fastest line. Exit lag also uses up to 4 simultaneous routes to stabilize your connection, and with servers across 5 different continents, exit lag adapts to wherever you're playing from. Best of all, it works with over 2,000 games. Setup is so easy, just download my link in the description, install, log in, turn it on, you'll see smoother gameplay, fewer spikes, and better gameplay than ever. Right now, to celebrate Exit Lag's birthday, you can get 12 months for the price of 6 on your first annual plan. It applies to solo, duo, and squad plans, all available for a very limited time. So check out the link in the description and use code DORONS to get an amazing discount and to improve your connection. Alright, so if you've been following some of the recent news, you might have seen that some crazy things have been going on with the Season of Discovery, which Blizzard confirmed was canon lore and not a different game. However, now that line has been so blurred that we don't really know what to think. So, you may remember at the start when Season of Discovery started, we were told this is like viewing Classic through a different lens, this is not an alternate reality or anything of the sort, but as Chris Metzen said, found photographs and he compared it kinda to like you seeing your parents traveling when they were young and it gives you a different view of them right now. The general logic was that things we haven't seen with our own eyes yet or happened while we were doing something different back in actual Classic. First, new lore was Zalatat as this mysterious figure that helps us craft some void stuff and the light crystals that are obviously all over retail right now, which is definitely a setup for the saga. However, now things have actually taken a completely different turn and they just introduced a brand new, never before seen Scarlet Crusade raid, and really they just retconned the known storyline, which got many of us to wonder whether this is really found photographs, whether they're just retconning the lore, or better yet, if they're starting a new timeline with new lore that might change the progression we had seen until now, pretty much changing everything that happened since then through some of these minor changes. I'm talking like Season of Discovery, but for all the known expansions thus far, so like starting it again with the Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, and everything else. So the focus is on when the Scarlet Crusade were the good guys or the neutral guys, and we have their settlement, which we had first really seen when we destroyed it as Dead Knights back in Wrath of the Lich King, but now it is an actual settlement that you can legit visit. We were told this is an old human place of worship for the light, which in the previous video I talked about how it could literally be a setup for these light-rotty humans. However, it apparently is one of the only parts of Lordran that remained untouched, so we have our first experience with a non-undead version of Lordran that we could actually visit. However, this is like some, visual stuff, but there are actual things that really change the story. So some of this lore is a mix of the comics and the game, but mostly comics, and without making an hour-long video here about the Ashbringer lore, I'm just going to give you the current storyline, and it kind of goes like this. So Alexandros Mogren dies, his blade, the Ashbringer, is corrupted, Kel'Thuzad resurrects him as one of the 4 horsemen, then the Scarlet Crusade forms after this. His son Darian kills Alexandros, takes the corrupted blade, then Kel'Thuzad attacks Light's Hope Chapel, Darian kills himself with the blade to release his father, he becomes a Dead Knight and he keeps the blade that we see in Wrath. Then Bolvar and the Alliance raid Naxxramas in Vanilla and kill Kel'Thuzad. In Wrath, Darian and the Scourge attack Light's Hope Chapel, the Ashbringer is purified, you remember this cinematic, Darian is freed and he forms the Knights of the Ebon Blade. However, now things are taking a huge turn as apparently the Scarlet Crusade controls the Ashbringer and does something, so the Scarlet Crusade even exists at this point. It didn't in the actual lore. A brand new character, Scarlet Inquisitor Calderon, leads the assault on Extremis, and he gets the Ashbringer for the Scarlet Crusade. There, he discovers that the Grand Crusader is corrupted by Balnazzar, and in the raid, Calderon himself kills Balnazzar, and the Crusade is seemingly empowered by the Ashbringer. Scarlets also raid Undercity and capture Grand Apothecary Putris, which is also a huge turn of events. The ghost of Alexander Smograin sacrifices his last glimmer of light to sanctify the restored Ashbringer, and the Ashbringer is actually reforged with the power of Nordrassil, the Well of Eternity, which really just came out of nowhere. In the end, the supposed will of the Ashbringer switches the sword from corrupted to normal. So this is what I was talking about. As you can see, this is a completely different storyline, like drastically different than what we know, and it really does give rise to the question, like, what even is going on with this? I mean, supposedly this is just the same lore through a different lens, but obviously this is like completely different lore. Now, it is entirely possible that after this, the Ashbringer gets corrupted again and ends up in the hands of Darien, and that brings us back to the regular lore, but this is sort of a timeline where the Scarlet Crusade won, and then Blizzard, being the tease they are, they give us a real mindbender here. So we actually run into Zabra Hex, which is a troll from the comics that originally started everything. And keep in mind, this comic really brought most of the Ashbringer lore that we know. And then in Season of Discovery, the troll asks us, how did we get the Ashbringer? As his vision showed a completely different storyline, like a completely different wielder of the blade. And then the troll says, maybe this time, however, things be different. Who knows? So is this really a hint? I mean, are we really visiting an alternate reality, or is this some crazy vision just leaking through the main timeline? Interestingly enough, there is an NPC in Undermine that references Season of Discovery coins, and honestly, I think something really serious is going on that people are just not talking about. I mean, obviously, Season of Discovery is teasing retail stuff for the World Soul Saga. These are without a doubt connected projects. It's first started with Zealotet, and then later Old God comments related to the War Within. Then we had seen those giant blind crystals that are obviously relevant to this. However, this might just be another one. One of the theories that people are mentioning is whether they're actually giving the Ashbringer sentience. I mean, you might remember that really weird light crystal that formed the Ashbringer that was never really explained, and now with the light crystals all over, it is kind of relevant. Could the Ashbringer be similar to Zealotet in a way? Light being, some sort of a Naru or something like inside the blade, not just a random power source? Furthermore, something I mentioned a million times by now is the really weird connection between the Scarlet Crusade and the newly introduced super powerful Light Arati Empire. The Light Empire, by all accounts, seems to be like a new Scarlet Crusade, just actually powerful and advanced. This enclave is a town, literally called New Avalon, on a shore, and then we got these light guys probably being on Avaloran, which seems to be an island. So Avalon, Avaloran. They also pointed out that this is an ancient light place of worship in the old Arati Empire, ancient light worship place called Avalon. Remember, these Arati guys left thousands of years ago, but they got all their light worship practices from the Eastern Kingdoms. They're very familiar with this land. Furthermore, what even is the Ashbringer? Could it somehow be tied to the Light Emperor? It is so vague and super hard to even speculate, but I feel like somehow it is all related. We were told the Light Emperor gets these visions of the light, and what is even going on? I mean, could the Emperor somehow interfered in this timeline? Did something happen with the Ashbringer? Maybe he sent the light crystal for that, or just did something to actually interfere. Obviously, nothing we can connect yet, but it does seem incredibly interesting. Another thing I mentioned is that there is a speculation, because within this new lore, the sword seems to be fighting in itself, like inside a sword, which means that the sword may be more sentient than we think, similar to how the dagger used to whisper to us before Zealotet was released, and now she's doing all this stuff, meaning some sort of like a light Zealotet could be inside it. However, the real question is, what is even going on? How is this possibly going to not impact future? It really just seems like a blatant retcon. Well, as I previously said, if they do a few things right and Darien somehow gets the blade back and the Scarlet Crusade just keeps falling apart, it could match the lore that we know with minor retcons, and it could be consistent, but nonetheless, some of these changes are still weird. It is also entirely possible that Blizzard is indeed softly starting a new timeline. Maybe they plan to do something with Season of Discovery, just like the classic of like recycling expansion expansions, but with actually different storylines and instances, because this would give them so much new stuff to do. I mean, keep in mind, if Putris remains a prisoner of the Scarlet Crusade, there is no Ratgate event, no Horde Alliance split in Northrend, which would impact everything else that happened. Also, with the Scarlet Crusade wielding the Ashbringer, that would literally change everything. Would the Lich King even really be able to destroy their enclave like he did in the Death Knight starter zone? I mean, just these slight lore changes could change everything if they do decide to follow up on things like these. On the other hand, it is also possible that this could be yet another of these, that they're somehow going to patch up with the current storyline to somehow involve the Light Emperor and Midnight. Keep in mind, in Midnight we're literally going to this same place. The Light Army is going to be relevant, very likely the Light around the Empire, so this Scarlet Crusade revamp or retcon could be somehow either a vision or something that is going to relate to the World Soul Saga. However, personally, I do think it would actually be very fun if they did do something like Classic, going through the expansions again with like this different game mode, but some minor changes like this happening. So not brand new lore, but like reusing the old characters with some alternate storylines, because as I said, just changing a few things like here would actually be super impactful on what happens next. Like without Tyrion having the Ashbringer, who knows what would have happened at Icecrown, whether we would have actually lost. So really, I think once Midnight gets announced and this progresses a little bit further, in a few months we'll figure out what exactly they are planning. So thank you for watching. Check out my video on the new Netflix deal that Blizzard actually made a few months back, and also subscribe to my channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!